we talk about wanting to be efficient as endurance athletes. The longer we want to go, we want to spend as little energy as possible to maintain our speed.
Welcome to the Low Tide Boyz, a Swimrun Podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris, and this is episode 17 of the show. Thank you so much for listening. This week, we have the one and only Nate Helming of the Run Experience on the show. Nate is a really good friend of mine. He's a CrossFit coach, triathlon coach, running coach, all sorts of strength and conditioning, and drops a lot of knowledge on this episode.
A tremendous amount of really, really well thought out positions and reasonings why he does certain things. And I mean, there was time, you'll notice that when he talks, there's very long chunks. It's because we're literally sitting here listening to him teach us. And I'm just sitting back and listening like I'm back in school, but I'm thinking about all this stuff. It makes a lot of sense. So
as they'd say in Boston, where he and I grew up, kid's wicked smart.
Oh,
wicked
smart. And so not only is he a good friend of Chris's, but we know that he can bring a lot of value to the audience as well. So I really enjoyed this podcast, and I think we played it pretty well. That Chris is very pro Nate, if you want to say that, and I wouldn't say
I've drank the Kool-Aid a long time ago.
Chris is on the Kool-Aid. I wouldn't say I don't hate Nate. I like him very much as a person. I just haven't bought into the I'm not on the working out with weights train yet. Although that has actually changed in the last couple of weeks, but we don't want to spoil it all. There's more. What has our training been like this last couple of weeks? I feel you and I, Chris, have both really ramped our training.
Yeah, I mean, I've been, I'm still on sort of the pre-kid training volume. Last week, I somehow managed to work out 15 hours, which for me, that's a huge achievement,
significant,
considering with kids and stuff. And when I had more work to do, if I could get 10, I'd be pretty stoked. So it's been great to get a lot of volume in and just feeling stronger, feeling great.
And you're doing, I feel, 4 to 5 rides a week? And the rest are runs?
I'm basically just every other day riding the bike for a couple of hours. And then, running either that same day or every other day as well. And then doing strength and random stuff in between.
Nice.
Including kids yoga with my daughter.
I've been doing YouTube kids workouts as well. And it just hit to be 80 plus degrees here in Marin, where Chris and I live. And I was making a target run, and I saw some Gatorades. Like those big Gatorade when you were a kid, that when they were ice cold and you were super dehydrated because you knew nothing about nutrition.
What was your flavor? Fruit punch?
No, the glacier cherry, or the white one.
That just shows how young you are. When
I don't like fruit punch.
Or when I was coming up in the
game,
there's
2 flavors.
It was lemon lime, orange, fruit punch, and grape. That's it. That's all you had.
Well, I like the glacier cherry, which is one of their Frost. It's in the Frost line. Anyway, I bought a bunch of these at Target.
Frost line.
Yeah, there's a whole line of Frost ones. And so my daughter's been calling that because we gave her a little bit, cut it with water and ice, and this is workout juice. So she wants a workout juice, and we'll be doing air squat or something, and she'll stop, run up, take a big swig of workout juice, and then come back.
I mean, frankly, if someone doesn't take that name and create a company
called Workout Juice,
it's a great name.
Awesome. So I've been doing kids yoga. I've actually been doing a lot of Peloton rides. Did a couple runs, but and potentially this weekend, it's my birthday weekend, and I was anticipating, or I'm trying to run a significant amount of mileage, but just doing neighborhood loops, which I've done the Strava distance, and it's a half mile. So I said, if I do 33 loops for 33 years old, then I will run about 17 or 18 miles or something.
I always forget how young you are.
But then I might just turn it into a marathon, but probably not.
Right.
So I'll just set a little table up literally down the block, have shoes there, have the chair, have some water bottles and an ice chest, some goos out, and I'll just run, each lap will take me 5 minutes maybe?
That's funny that
I'm going to get dizzy.
Where we live, it's so I mean, it's suburban, but also like suburban on the line of rural that you could actually do that. Like
I wouldn't say it's rural out here.
Like my first thought is
someone's going to take my table.
Steal that.
I wouldn't do it when we lived in San Francisco.
Oh,
I mean, that would be silly. It wouldn't be there after one lap. Like, damn, where'd my other shoes go? My Hoka's got swiped. Swiper, no swiping. Our shout out this week is going to sound a little bit familiar, but it's also topical.
Yeah. So this week we want to shout out Brent Molsberry. He's the RD of the Orcas Island Swimrun, including he puts on a bunch of races through their Quest Racing in upstate
Washington State.
Washington State, Pacific Northwest.
Yep.
I guess it's not upstate. That's like New York.
I guess it is upstate Washington, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And this week he put out his race report for Ötillö Catalina, which really wasn't that long ago, but it feels like it was months ago at this point. And and it was such a great race report. We'll link the URL in the show notes for people to check it out. But there was one story that I remember him telling us, but I didn't realize how ridiculous it was.
And we'll give the abbreviated version.
We'll give a really short version.
And before you get started on that, I want to say one of the points I found really interesting, it was his first swimrun race.
Yeah.
You're a race director of swimruns, but obviously it makes sense, right? He hasn't had time to go do his own race, and there's not a ton of them. So I just thought that was kind of cool. That's another cool, unique thing. But Chris?
Yeah, and his wife, she's the big racer. She's part of
Swimrun Labs,
Swimrun Labs team. So he's racing with his good friend Chris, and they're at Parsons Landing, which that was the swim that was really ridiculous with the swells and people falling, ass over tea kettle and all that stuff.
And if I remember, his partner is this big dude. He looks like an extra from like Game of Thrones or something. Just this, he had really long hair, right?
And tall guy, yeah, for sure.
Big dude.
So Chris's wife is also on team Swimrun Labs, and they happen to catch up with them there, and she had lost her goggles. So he gives her his goggles, as a good husband should.
That's nice.
And then Brent is like, well, I can't swim that strong, so I'm going to give him my goggles. So Brent is thinking that he has to swim 4-ish miles without goggles. And then luckily at the next, at the Boy Scout camp or whatever, someone happened to have
the next energy station.
It was, such a great story, and teamwork across teams. Like everything that's really funny and funky about Swimrun is like encapsulated in this race report. So I encourage people to check it out, and we'll link it in the show notes.
Cool. And I think other than that, we're pretty much ready to get on with the show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beefy show. It's nearing close to an hour probably, but a lot of really good content and some actual key tangible things that if you're looking to get into making yourself a stronger kind of athlete and you don't have weights in your garage or Target sold out or whatever, Nate gives you workouts to do. And then we also is a good time to check out his website and his app, The Run Experience.
The Run Experience are the #1 running channel on YouTube in the world, which is, I'm assuming that's pretty hard to do.
It's impressive.
And Nate Helming, awesome guest, really good friend of mine, so I'm biased. But enjoy the show. With us today, we have Nate Helming. He's the co-founder of The Run Experience, and he's also a strength and fitness coach based in the Bay Area. I've known Nate for 8 years, maybe. He was my personal...
8 years, man.
Was it 8 years? He's my personal triathlon coach back in the day. Really good friend of mine. I totally drank the Kool-Aid of his belief that strength is a really important part of anybody's endurance regimen. And most recently, with the Run Experience, which everyone should check out, he started a campaign called Together We Move to help athletes through the times of COVID. And we're
all types of athletes.
All types of athletes. Runners, swimmers, triathletes, swim runners, gymnasts. With that, Nate, thank you so much for being on the show.
It is a pleasure, gentlemen. It is nice to know that we are all recording from our respective places in the beautiful Marin County.
Yes, we
all are Marinites? Marinians?
North
Marinites.
People.
Marinites.
So like I said, full disclosure, Nate and I are really good friends. So it might be a little bit of inside baseball into sort of our history together. But Nate, for people that don't know you, can you give us sort of your biography in terms of how you became this sort of world-known YouTube sensation fitness guru?
Oh snap! That's a lot of
world sensation.
That's a lot of titles packed in there.
Yeah.
World sensation. So I'll do a quick synopsis and then I'll get into it a little bit. I was a runner that was injured in triathlon, that was injured, that turned into strength coaching and triathlon coaching, that led to speaking and doing group classes, and then to video, and then to traveling, and then to building a business called the Run Experience, which now has, online video training for runners and to a certain degree triathletes and swim runners that they can download and access all over. And in my story, which I'll get into a little bit more, the current iteration of our business was to be able to help anyone be able to have access to high quality coaching on movement, to be able to problem solve their own injuries, because a lot of times we will wait a very long time to go visit a doctor or a physical therapist. And a lot of times they're not necessarily the best sources for fixing a lot of the low level things. If I tear my ACL, go get surgery, go see a physical therapist. If my hamstring or knee is kind of achy, it doesn't meet their threshold, but it's still a problem. So how do we handle those things ourselves? And I just learned a lot over the years by mostly banging my head against the wall and having to, kind of stumble and figure out, some home solutions. And before the time of our current shelter in place, this was just to give people access who couldn't afford to go to a gym or they didn't have the resources in our area. Now it's, more relevant than ever.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something that you've told to me over the years that I think is, I always keep it in my mind. It's these little nagging injuries that when people don't deal with them,
the niggles.
It's kind of like a ship that's at sea and it's off course by just a little bit, and it seems like imperceptible, but after a long time, you're like fucking off course. And you could have handled it. You could have done the course correction early on, but you just kind of let it go, and then now you're full.
No one
injury.
wants to swim extra distance.
Right.
Having swam
Especially
extra
us.
distance, we don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, especially us.
So, Nate and Chris have been a fan friends for a while, and I met Nate at a Wildflower, where this is kind of local triathlon. Me and him went on a run together during that training camp, and we ran 10 miles or so together back 2013, 14-ish. But so Chris has always been into CrossFit and weight training. I have not been so much. And now the question I'll ask to you, Nate, is why would I or any athlete do weight training in addition to their sport-specific, swimming training and their running training or their cycling, whatever athlete you do? What's the net benefit that I'm going to get from adding another discipline to an already kind of packed training schedule with swimming and running and different things like that?
It's a great question. Question. So most people find their sport, whether it's running or even triathlon or swimrun, for a few reasons, but one is just to get fit, right? Like we're moms, we're dads, we are working. We want to not only do something that will build our bodies up, but also, have some fun, have some new experiences, meet some different people along the way. And that looks different, obviously, depending on what age bracket and area of your life you're in. We're in this really interesting predicament that a lot of people are coming into a sport because they want to get fit. But if we're being honest, especially if they've had a little bit of a break, they're actually not fit enough to execute or perform their sport without breakdown. And a great way to kind of give you this, to make this kind of sink in a little bit more, is to talk a little bit about our notions of specificity, which is a, tried and true. It's in every Bible you adhere to. There's some principle of specificity that says if you want to get good at one thing, you have to do more of that thing to get better. And that applies to swimming. We noticed that when athletes go from swimming once a week to swimming 3 times a week to getting in the water 5 or 6 days a week, like their swimming improves. Same with other sports. But the problem is that it works until it stops working. And the context of our broader life is really, really important for this. Have either of you gentlemen, you fine learned gentlemen, have either of you read Boys in the Boat?
Nope. But I've been in a boat before when I was a young boy.
It's a cool book. It's a real life story of the men's U.S. 1936 Olympic rowing team. And they were like the Cinderella upset of the Cinderella upset story.
Wow.
Where the United States, which was not dominant then at the time, beat the then very dominant Germans in rowing, like during like Hitler's reign of the Olympics in 1936. The team that represented the U.S. was this school. It was University of Washington that beat all of the heavy hitters, which were all the East Coast
Ivy Leagues.
Ivy League schools. So it was like this small, like West Coast outfit that was like kind of just an upstart, beat all the long established U.S. people. And then the U.S. generally wasn't favored. Then they go ahead and beat the Germans. And so you're just like listening to the story of their life. It's just more of just kind of fun read of the times. But, my coaching brain is always turned on a little. And the coach at the time, said this thing about specificity. He was like, hey, men, or however they talked to you in 1936, like, during rowing season, I only want you to row. I don't want you to do anything else. Everything else must stop. And you're like, oh, specificity. That's like what we say now. Until you like read the rest of the story and you actually saw their full lives. The reason why he wanted these kids to stop doing other stuff was because these kids were lumberjacks in the summer. They walked 10 to 15 miles a day. They were like picking up logs. They were like catching giant salmon out of rivers. Like these were just strong dudes. They're not 21st century, like
humans.
I don't have calluses on my palms, sitting hunched over my screen all day. My hips and shoulders are stiff. My thoracic spine is super tight. I've got no extension. My shoulders have no range because my life doesn't demand it. Humans. So the notion of specificity at one point made perfect sense for humans who were lifting and moving and physically required because of life. Now in our life, we have engineered all inconvenience out of our life, so much so that you don't have to walk in an airport at all, right? You can just go on the moving sidewalk. Like that's where we are as a human race, people.
Yeah, well, it's like sitting is the new smoking. I thought sitting used to be a break. Nice
right,
break.
Exactly, right? It's like, hey, when I don't sit that much, I'm gonna freaking sit. And now all of a sudden we have to deal with that. So that's a very long-winded way of saying when we go into our sport, no one, it doesn't matter who you are, is going to be okay just doing their sport because they don't have a lifestyle that is taking care of their range of motion, their strength, their stability. And so that's why we need to supplement it with other things.
So I guess the caveat to that, unless you're a lumberjack in 2020, then you're probably good.
Exactly.
So Nate, why don't we give people a little bit of your history, because I feel like everything that you're saying, again, because I know you really well, like this isn't just a theory. Like this happened to you, to your body, and you were able to rebuild it, and in that process sort of discover this better way. Yeah.
So I, played a lot of different sports in high school, and I was only very much focused on like the season at a time. And in retrospect, that probably kept me pretty healthy and balanced. I would ski in the winter. I mountain biked a lot in the summer, did a little running. I like ran in the fall. Like I played lacrosse. So I was like decently balanced all the way around. When I got into college, I focused more and more on running. And I started listening to the advice from a lot of running magazines, which was, hey, if you do this thing, do more of it. Run more miles, ditch the other stuff. Like, oh, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't ski on the weekend. That's a little dangerous. I'll just run more. And so I've just sort of lost all this sort of general stuff that was actually keeping me pretty healthy and balanced. And I just became more fragile as an athlete. Well, pretty soon after college, I was cross training so much to support my running. I was on the bike more. I saw a local, triathlon race, got very excited and tried that, and then got into triathlon. I was like, this is cool. But like, let's all be clear. I didn't choose triathlon just because. I chose triathlon because I was an injured runner. It was just, I was cross training more. So I kind of stumbled my way into a new sport. I moved out to California, started racing longer distances, had a knack for some of the longer Ironman distance races, and pretty soon was racing under 10 hours for that distance and was qualifying for the Ironman World Championships. And I all of a sudden, I had bought a little bit more highway by switching sports, but the same issues that were aggravating me in running just came back in triathlon. And I had these nagging low-level injuries. They didn't show up on an MRI. They weren't anything that was broken. So when I went to see an orthopedic surgeon or physical therapist, like, they didn't really know what to do other than to give me some very basic exercises to, strengthen things. Like, oh, well, maybe your glutes aren't very active, so you should turn those on. So I would do these glute activation exercises in the hope that as soon as I went outside running again, it would just work. And it didn't really work. And it also got me thinking then about, like, wait a minute, I'm not the only one who has this problem. How many other endurance athletes are slipping through the cracks? And that got me more into exploring coaching and strength training and looking into areas of strength and conditioning that most endurance runners have shunned. At the time, this is when CrossFit was starting to become more popular, and not to, fly the CrossFit flag in and of itself per se, but it was one of the first times that culturally, as an athlete, I was exposed to bigger, broader, more functional lifts like squatting and front squatting and deadlifting, right, shoulder pressing and pull. I've seen some of this before, but not nearly that way. And as soon as I started to get a little exposure to that, it was like I'd been vitamin deficient this whole time. And I all of a sudden got what my body needed. And after months of frustration, after skipping Kona because I was injured, all of a sudden someone handed me a barbell and I just like felt better. And I was more pissed than I was anything else at first. But yeah, that just got me into this new path.
So these like little niggle injuries that you had kind of forced you to skip arguably maybe the largest amateur race in the world. And that sort of sounds like that was like the catalyst for you to kind of explore that, and the CrossFit sort of popularity happening is like the perfect sort of crossroads for you in your life, it sounds like.
And Nate won't say this, but he qualified for Kona because he won Oceanside 70.3. So that's not no slouch.
That's no slouch. It's a very competitive.
No slouches around
early
here.
Season California race.
Yeah, so I was crestfallen. That was a pain. We all have, painful moments, and sometimes, and thankfully I can point to that experience now, putting me, like, if that didn't happen, I don't know if I'd be doing a lot of the things I'm doing now. So in that respect, I can be thankful, but guys, it sucked. Like, oh, yeah. I had my whole family fly out to Hawaii to watch me sit on the sidelines. And I remember the day after Kona, watching everyone with their like orange race bracelets on and just sunburns and just kind of that like satisfied, like kind of limping around. And I was just, oh man, that was painful. I know what it's like. For anyone who's listening, who's dealt with injuries, I know what it's like.
That's horrible. So I feel for you there.
So I feel like, so that kind of got you on this path to, okay, I think I figured something out. I think there's a lot of people that could be served by this. And that's kind of where I showed up in the picture in sort of your universe. So we had mutual friends. You showed up to a group workout I was at, and you just said something to me that it just now it seems, profound. At the time I was like, oh my God, I've never heard this before. But you were talking about strength for triathletes, and it was like, yeah, you're a triathlete. You should be able to, walk out your house and just run a 5K, no problem. You should probably be able to jump on a bike and bike 20 miles without even thinking about it, swim 1,000 yards. It's like, don't you think you should be able to do 10 push-ups and maybe squat correctly and, maybe even be able to do a pull-up or 10? And to me, that was just like, yeah, like I want to be like a well-rounded person. I want to actually be strong
athlete.
I mean, for years that we worked together and we trained together, I mean, there was this progression. This is pre-children, where, I mean, there was just no plateauing. I just kept getting stronger, kept doing dumber shit, crazier events, and I just had like a lot of I don't know how to say it. Like, I just had a lot of buffer in being able to do things because I was strong enough to just be able to do kind of crazy stuff.
Now, I want to head this off because I think I think a lot of people, or at least, if I'm listening to this, I'm kind of thinking, because this is the excuse that I have used before. So you have on this podcast, you have Chris, who's like all the way in one camp with Nate in the, hey, cross training and lifting weights is really cool. And you have Chipper over here. And I'm like, hey, I can't do probably 10 push-ups right now, and I have to go to my knees. And I'm just being real talk right now. But, Chris, when he says he's getting really strong, he didn't, when I would meet up with him, hey, you want to go for a run? It's not like he's going out there and he looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger from the 80s, just this huge, jacked, muscle-bound guy. He just looked leaner and meaner. And he was really mean to me. And he kicked me one time. No,
well,
I'm kidding.
It's funny. There was this one time where Chipper, I actually convinced Chipper and this other friend of ours, Phil, to come to the Y and do a workout with me. And I invited them back, and they didn't come.
I came.
Wow.
Well, you came that first time, but then you didn't come again. Because I think I put you through the paces a little too much.
Too aggressive.
Soon,
So I'm acutely aware of how intimidating it can be to go into the gym. Similarly, for first-time triathletes or swimmers, like the thought of showing up at that first track run, or the thought of, going to like a master swim, you sort of picture like all of these like perfect athletic humans who've been doing this since they were 3 years old, and they will immediately notice that you're not one of them and you will be shunned. In most worlds that I know of, that doesn't really exist, other than in our brains. Like, you'll quickly realize once you go in, you're like, oh, they're just like me. They're trying to wake up before their kids have to go to school so they can get a workout in. And like, oh, that's cool. This person is like 70 and they go super slow. But you know what? They've been out here for 30, 40 years. That's kind of cool. Like there's all levels. And with the strength, it's no different. It's really about the idea of practice. And Chipper, for someone like you who'd say, it's like, hey, you know what? Like, life, I got kids, work, I don't have time to go to a gym. I like to start all my athletes with just body weight training. Like, the 4 basic movements that I start all athletes on are the squat, the push-up, the lunge, and the burpee. And if you can master those 4 movements, not only can you build yourself up pretty well, you can do these easily in a hotel room or in an airport or wherever you are. You could add a backpack or luggage or whatever,
or a child
for a little bit of weight. Yeah, but then you're
Your
learning
own,
the foundations. Totally, you're learning the foundations to add weight if you ever want to at some point.
Okay, so Nate, you've convinced me, and you've convinced all the listeners that we need to do. I'm not trying to be a dick. Sorry, we're on board, right? What would be, and I haven't lifted weights in, let's just say 3 years, or the listeners don't have any dumbbells or kettlebells at their house. What would you recommend as like a kind of an ease into it? Because Chris has inspired me, and I have had a little niggle in my left ass cheek that every time I climb a hill when I'm running trails bugs me, and I have to take it easy, and I can't run the downhills as well as I want to. So I'm on board. So I've recently started in the last 2 weeks, let's say. I won't overstate my situation here, but I have been doing exactly that, body weight exercises. I got some sandbags here, and I have like 20, 25 pounds that I've been doing squats on, and if I can't hang, I just ditch the sandbag. So if I want to get started, and I don't want to be blasted for 4 days because my quads are wrecked because I try to squat 225 15 times at the gym, like going in, pistols are blaring. what's sort of like your prescription, so to say, for I'm getting started. I haven't worked out in a while. What's some things I can do at home with no equipment? How many times a week? Just give me a little breakdown here for the listeners.
So I think if we want to go into the specifics in that respect, I would say that it's perfectly reasonable for most humans to be doing 2 strength and conditioning sessions a week in addition to their sport. These sessions could be as short as 30 minutes. Maybe at times a little longer. And there could be a little ebb and flow, right? Like, let's say you're getting closer to some events you particularly care about. These events could be tapered off a little bit more just from a movement mobility section, keep your body open. But hey, we're in a time right now as this is being recorded where it's like, maybe we don't have a lot of races on our calendar. Maybe we have a little bit more time. We're not doing as much structured training in the pool. Hey, here's an opportunity to be a little bit more aggressive here. And I'll say a few things about the soreness. There is the knuckleheaded degree of like, oh man, I just did 100 of something and I can barely lift my arms after. Let's say you do that by actually going back in a couple of days later and doing some of those movements again. That will actually help expedite your recovery and get you unsore. So if you did a bunch of push-ups and presses, some sort of pressing and overhead motion is actually going to help with the shoulders. So it's one of the weird things we just have to remember, just with running or with cycling, the very same activity that digs us into a hole, if I do a really hard 5K or half mile running, is the very same thing that can help me recover, right? That easy run a couple days after. It's no different from squats, lunges, push-ups, all that stuff.
I agree with you there, and I think Chris is going to say the same thing. Like, as an athlete, once you it's almost a level of maturity. Once it clicks for you that, hey, you just did your race or an effort, that 20-minute, super easy 10-minute mile pace, little jog around, move some blood, will do way more good for you than taking 3 days off. Like, once that clicks for you, it's kind of a really counterintuitive thing, but just like you said, that sort of helps clear out the rhubarb.
That movement is really helpful. And, there are a few caveats. One, like, let's say you did a bunch of squats and you squat again the next day and your knee kind of hurts. And it's like, well, one, maybe there's something a little off with your squat mechanics that we can look at. 2, maybe your quad is a little tight. You've got something that needs a little bit of addressing from a mobility standpoint. So we work on that. But you could also say, you know what, today I'm not going to do squats because those hurt. So I'm going to do some deadlifts instead. My leg's a little straighter, less pressure and flexion in the knee, more hamstring and glute, right? So we can always think about it that way. But for anyone who's starting, the general prescription I aim for in terms of total volume is something like 20 to 30 repetitions of something. If you're doing 20 to 30 repetitions of something for the first time, for most people, you should finish feeling a little tired. You're maybe a little sore the next day, but you're not blown out. That's like where I like to start.
Gotcha. So, and I'm assuming, I don't put words in your mouth though, so let's pretend that someone or you prescribed that kind of 4 little circuit that you have: overhead press, lunge, squat, and burpee. Maybe you did 3 sets of 10 or 4 sets of, I can't math that quick, but anyway, 5 sets of 5 or whatever it is. That math didn't add up, I know. But that sounds like the proper way that you would sort of prescribe things.
Yeah, a fun ladder I like would be to do this. You would do a ladder of starting with 2 squats, and then you do 2 push-ups, and then you do 4 squats and 4 push-ups, and you go 6 and 6, 8 and 8, 10 and 10. If you go all the way up to 10, that's 30 reps of each. If you're someone who wanted to stop early, you could stop at 8, and that would be 22 reps of each, right? So you'd have a little volume. Let's say you're advanced, you want to go further. Go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and then you'd be all the way up to 42 reps.
Wow.
And
this is all just body weight stuff.
Body weight stuff. Yeah. On the way back down, do lunges and burpees. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, lunges and burpees on the way back down. And it's kind of a fun way. The ladder, especially on the way up, you can, with the low volume, you can really focus on one of the things we want to avoid with strength and actually with a lot of sports is this notion of task completion. And what I mean by task completion is I am just going to close my eyes, grit my teeth, and get myself through this no matter how. And there are times where that's appropriate, right? Like you're swimming and it's the end and you're tired. You're not going to be like, hey, let me slow down and work on this drill, right? You're like, no, I'm drilling it. I am cruising here just to finish. So there's a time and place for everything. But when we do these ladders, what's cool is we say, hey, can you give me 2 really good quality push-ups? You're screwing your hands into the ground. Your shoulders are nice and stable. You're not collapsing through the upper body. Your butt is squeezed. Your quads are flexed. Your pelvis is in a nice locked in position. And then can you come back and can you do 4 without breaking down? Here's the thing. We all have moments of breakdown. It's not to say no one does. Our goal is to push our breakdown somehow past our finish line with maybe a little buffer, as Chris said earlier, because, hey, imagine if you swam, you had a 2-mile swim race and you swam off course and all of a sudden you swam a half a mile off course. You're like, well, half a mile from the finish line,
that's
I
like
can't swim anymore because that's all I've trained for. So I guess I'm just going to wait for someone to pick me up. Right. Like that seems insane. So like we need the ability to buffer ourselves through. And by building up the ladder this way, you start to see where your point of breakdown is. And then you have a decision to make. Am I going to go into task completion mode? Am I going to make this ugly as sin? Or am I going to realize that I'm in my garage and this is not on Strava and no one cares how fast I finish this thing. And I can stop and be like, hey, how much of a break do I need before I can put this together? And then can I string together higher quality doses under an increasingly challenging environment?
So this is a lot of knowledge. So I'm just going to plug it and we'll plug it again at the end of the show.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a lot of stuff where,
you know, the Run Experience, their app has all these workouts, has training plans, has specific workouts, has recovery stuff. So, you know, people should definitely check that out if they want to get some sort of visual of what these things look like. I mean, I will say, Nate, that, you know, Chipper was talking about having his problem with his hip, and during this long run we were on, I pretty much diagnosed it. I was like, hey, stand here for a second. Can you do a little bit of a squat? I was like, oh, your knee's collapsing on your right side. You probably need to do, you know, deadlifts and like single leg deadlifts and some more squats, and that'll strengthen up what's happening if it's only happening on the uphills and not the downhills. And he was just looking at me. I was like, yeah, man, I've been hearing this stuff for years, you know?
Yeah. And that's really cool, right? Because here's the deal. And this is something that it took me a while to like fully learn and appreciate, but like we as human beings, we are wired for movement. We are not wired for musculature. And currently our strength and healthcare system talks more about musculature than it talks about movement. So right now, you know, when I was injured and I saw PTs, one of the issues and fundamental breakdowns was the approach. In certain respects, it was backwards. Rather than talking about movement and better mechanics, they were talking about anatomy and musculature. So they would say, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
We're just being good listeners.
There we go. They would basically say, hey, your glute medius isn't firing. So you need to do these random exercises to strengthen your glute medius, on the hope that they would all of a sudden just work for you in other times when you weren't thinking about it, which is sort of like paint by number. You know, like you give like a colored grid. It's like put yellow in this quadrant and red in this and here to here. And all of a sudden, if the grid goes away, you'll be turned into an artist. Like it doesn't work that way. So what Chris did with you, Chipper, was said he saw the knee was caving in a little bit, which is basically another way of saying, hey, your glute medius isn't firing, because your glute medius is in charge of stabilizing and externally rotating your hip. It's when you squatted and your knee came in, which is a lot easier to see and pronounce than the muscle itself. You know, all of a sudden we could be like, hey, your knee's moving in, which probably means your hips aren't working right. If you just drive your knee out, you don't even need to think about the muscle. The muscle is firing because that's what it does to stabilize the knee. So all of a sudden, if we can focus on a much simpler model that's much more DIY, and we feel much more empowered in the process.
That's a wealth of information. And also, I'm a very visual person. So Chris mentioned the app. You also have your YouTube channel, right? And I know it is called the quote-unquote run experience, but a lot of the things that you're doing translates across just general. It should maybe be called like the athlete experience or something. Like, it's not just about running on there. There's a lot of other stuff that can be taken and translated or adapted to other sports or athletic endeavors, I will say. So it's the run experience on YouTube, right?
Yep, it is. Thank you. Yeah,
we'll link it in the show notes.
Sort of
course.
realized totally, like we've sort of realized that, let's say squatting, for example, there's no like running specific squat or soccer specific squat or anything else. So to tell athletes that, hey, we're going to do a swim run specific strength exercise, it's a little bit of a shell game. It's like, no, we actually want you do plenty of specific work when you swim and when you run. This time is actually specifically general. We want you to be a good athlete. And we want you to learn principles that if you do it in this stuff, like it can be applied to any sport that you do. And in that respect, you're absolutely right. It really should be the athlete experience.
He's going to waive his consulting fee for that feedback, by the way.
Whoa.
Oh, there we go.
I don't know if I will.
So Nate, so let's talk about the run experience a little bit. That's been going on for, I think, like 5 years, almost 6, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about how that began and how it's evolved to what you're doing now, which is really, I mean, you have this app, you have run workouts, you can go for a run and plug in to the app and hear a conversation about strength and different things. I mean, it's pretty cool. I went on a run yesterday and I was listening to the episode with Dean Karnassus.
Oh, cool.
It was super cool. Just running and getting like running related content was pretty cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about sort of the run experience?
Yeah. What is it?
So when we started the run experience, my partner and I, Craig DeSanos, was someone who had come into the gym who I had worked on and helped. He was in between businesses and he wanted to, start something and learn a little bit more about like digital marketing in the space. And for me, I was at a time where I was pretty maxed out with coaching one-on-one athletes and classes at my gym, San Francisco CrossFit, and then, coaching endurance athletes online. So I was ready to try something different. And what I wanted to do was figure out how to give some version of the experience that I could deliver to athletes one-on-one or in a class online, right? To the mom in West Virginia training for her first half, I wanted her to have good resources and mechanics to learn how to squat or do a push-up or learn something like the couch stretch if her knee's hurting while she's ramping up her mileage. So we started with video-based running programs, and the current technology at the time was basically a spreadsheet, right? And even to this day, a lot of online running programs designed incredibly thoughtfully by the best running coaches out there, so I'm not throwing any shade on the run workout portions, would literally just have be a spreadsheet that says run 3 miles today, run hills tomorrow, rest or cross train or yoga on the next day. And that's like the level of information you got as a runner. So coming back full circle to what we were saying in the beginning, so many people out there are downloading these plans because they're just trying to run to get fit, but they aren't fit enough to run yet. And their resources are just so lacking in these run programs that were out there.
Very interesting. So I'm hearing this and I'm thinking in my head, okay, let's say I'm a swim runner and I have 5 run workouts a week ranging from 20 minutes to maybe 2 hours. And then I have 3, maybe 4 on a good week swim workouts ranging from an hour to maybe 2 hours. And it sounds like, if I am listening to Nate and all your great advice and very well-educated thoughts, it sounds like I should be adding 2 to 3 20 to 30 minute maybe body weight workouts, maybe a very lightweight workout or grab my backpack, throw a couple books, and maybe get 50 pounds on my back and try doing some squats and burpees. That sounds, in your opinion, I could forego maybe one run workout and supplement 1 to 2 strengths workouts. That would not be a loss of run improvement. That wouldn't be a negative on my run game. That would actually improve the run game by adding in these strength sessions.
Yes, I am not a scientist, but there are studies out there about, we could have the argument from the, running economy standpoint.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
the more muscularly engaged and stronger we are, the better economy we have. So there's that level. I'd say that everyone has, key sessions in their training plan each week. If it's running, it's probably some interval session. It might be a run that's pushing distance, depending what you're doing, or maybe something that's like tempo intervals. Like, we don't want to replace those. Where we can give ourselves a little room would be some of those days that we're just going out to run just for the sake of it, where it's just an easy thing. And what we could say is like, look, why don't we shorten that day to maybe like a mile warm up or cool down? But then, yes, we'll benefit more in certain circumstances from the strength and conditioning piece. But there is a lot of it depends, Chipper, because let's say you're someone who has an incredible strength and conditioning foundation. You know what? Like, you probably don't need all the supplemental stuff, so go run more, right? But if you're an athlete who is hanging on the edge of injury and just every time, like, you're just kind of dipping and ducking with injuries all the time, I might cut your running back even more. I might say, hey, maybe you can only run twice a week and we should get you even stronger, because that's what your body, it sounds like it says it needs.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, for my whole life, I've been, hey, I'm only going to run, bike, and swim. Or if I was doing triathlon, I did do some work with Mike O, actually, who we've had on the show before at Purple Patch. And we did have a kind of a functional strength program that was 20 to 30 minutes 2 times a week. And I definitely feel that I was in the best shape and felt the most, quote unquote, like bomb-proof or like athletic when I was doing those. And I wasn't throwing crazy weights around. I'm never the guy to be trying to like max out my bench press or any stuff like that. Like, it was a lot of single leg body weight, lunges, holding, maybe 10, 15, 20 pound dumbbells, like not crazy weights for a big, 180, 200 pound male. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to use this as my own personal prescription.
For sure. It doesn't always need to be a lot. So we always have to realize that something is better than nothing. So getting this in anyway, even if it's 1 day a week is better than 0 days a week, right? So we want to like start and realize from there. Body weight is better again than not going to a gym. And then, if you have the ability to mix things up with something that is an external load, that external load is incredibly valuable because it forces us to stabilize and engage in ways that we just can't otherwise. So like when we sprint, we go up a hill, or when we do on the bike, to get super geeked out, if we do like low cadence, big ring intervals, right? We're just putting a ton of force through the pedals, and we're doing that in a way that increases the demand on our bodies. Like, we talk about wanting to be efficient as endurance athletes. The longer we want to go, we want to spend as little energy as possible to maintain our speed, right? So another word of that is, say, lazy. We want to be as lazy as possible as we can while maintaining the speeds we want to go and engage as little as possible. When I'm in the gym, I want the opposite. I don't want to be lazy in there. What I want is I want to put myself in positions that require the most amount of physical engagement to get all of those muscles firing, to be as absolutely online and engaged as possible. And that's where heavier lifting can be valuable. But you can also do this just with body weight. Take your regular plank and all of a sudden go towards a single leg plank or single arm plank and try to hold that without your hips shifting. You've all of a sudden increased that load and that You've introduced a little rotational demand that's quite challenging. And that's just a great way to do it. Like take your squat and focus on, Chris, you remember shrimp squats?
Sure.
Do you remember those guys?
Yeah.
Pistol squats, right? Single leg squats. Like if we start to do those, all of a sudden we've just increased the demand and the load at the same time. So those movements don't have to be high volume. They could be 3 to 5 reps, or if you're doing like a single arm plank, try to hold it for 20 to 30 seconds to start. That's a great way to do that.
Nice. And to bring this like kind of back to swim run a little bit, those sort of stabilizing muscles that you're building up by doing these, single leg squats and these other things where you're adding load, you're not just running, like swim run's almost the opposite of triathlon. You're running on usually technical trails. You're coming in and out of mixed terrain like water, sand, slippery algae-filled rock, up a trail, roots. You need all those like stabilizing muscles to help, and it's pretty, because I just started from, let's call it ground zero. I'm here trying to do a plank, and I'm shaking like a dog shit in peach pits, but I'm over here, and it's pretty.
Is that a real expression, or you just make it up?
Have you ever seen a dog poop peach pits?
No.
Oh man, it's crazy. I'll send you a video. You too, Nate.
Oh my god.
And
don't send me that.
Okay.
I'll just get Chris's.
Yeah, I'll just tell you about
get his take on it. It was pretty eye-opening to me about when I'm trying to do these exercises that I would consider like pretty basic and rudimentary, like how much of a struggle I'm having. But also I was thinking, man, my ankle's like really moving around. After doing this for a month or two, my ankle's going to be a lot stronger, so I won't be worrying about being so nimble on the trails going downhill. Like it's probably going to give me more confidence and stuff. So I just found that to be a pretty cool thing, and I'm sure that sort of you found that in your own personal experience, coming from having the niggle type injuries, to you kind of felt more bomb proof, I guess.
Going back to earlier aspects of my story, when I started to after my Kona experience where I failed, I started working with some trainers that were helping me out, and we didn't really have too much of a playbook other than like, a lot of other triathletes have done this, so do this too. It was like, hey, we're gonna like just experiment with some more aggressive lifting. And at the time, wasn't able to race. I wasn't able to run that much. So we were sort of using this to build my fitness and body up, and then allow me to take more running, handle more running when I could. And, it was a process, but over the next 6-9 months, I was starting to perform at higher levels prior to my injury. And, over the next few years, probably some of my best athletic years ever, while I sort of maintained a much more aggressive approach towards strength and conditioning than a lot of my competitors and peers. So there's the element of, there's a health longevity component to this. There's a fun exploration component to this, because I'm meeting new people and learning new things. And I think to a certain degree, at least I enjoy that. And then there's also the performance benefit. It's like, hey, doing this stuff makes me better, right? Like this kind of checks all the boxes. And I know for me, it's going to stay in my life one way or another, whether I'm in the gym lifting and working out, or right now I'm doing handstands against my door and lifting soup cans loaded into my backpack.
Wait, you're doing that right now? Like right now? That's amazing.
I think he means today.
I got you guys on mute while I'm doing my sets.
Is it chicken noodle soup, or is it like a minestrone?
It's like, yeah.
I found the Campbell's were a little heavier.
Oh, okay,
we wanted to get,
or those big Progresso, not Progresso.
Exactly.
That's insurance.
The New England clam chowder, that creamy base, that really adds some load.
Perfect.
But I wanted to touch a little bit on the swim and run piece, just from a mechanic standpoint, because how you sit and stand throughout the day and how you move your arms is going to really affect both sports. And we all see the runner, what do they start to look like when they break down, right? Their upper body gets a little hunched over, their shoulders start to round in. And that's just like a universal sense of fatigue, right? Like we all just kind of hunch, our shoulders round in, and our elbows start to flare out. And then you can see the runner, their arm swing doesn't look as north-south anymore. It starts to look more east-west, right? Have you guys seen that?
Yep.
So it starts to go more across the body. What happens when we get tired when we swim? Like, where does the arms go?
I've noticed I get real lazy when I'm casting out. I'm not a great swim mechanics person, but my reach when I'm reaching out, I notice sometimes in the pool, like if we're doing a big 5,000-6,000 yard swim, that 5,000 plus yards, I'm like, my arm's dragging like I got like a 3-pound dumbbell on it, like it's hitting the water, it's skidding along, just the cast isn't as good, and obviously the catch in the pool not as powerful.
And have you guys ever had trouble like swimming in a straight line?
Yes.
Like when you have sighting, like how often do you have to sight?
The first part of knowing you have a problem is admitting that you have one, and we have a swimming straight problem. Sometimes.
I'm a triathlete too, right? I remember learning this. So I can remember in the beginning when I was swimming, I went to sight every like 3 strokes.
Yep.
And I realized what was happening was that my arms weren't just extending out in front. As I got tired, they started to cross over, right? Like kind of that imaginary line that extends out of our body. So if I'm crossing over a lot, all of a sudden, like what Chris said very early on, it's like you're just starting to just swim off course a few degrees. And if you keep that up, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And what I'm saying is the breakdown in fatigue with running, my upper back gets a little hunched, my shoulders internally rotate and round, my elbows start to swing out to the side, is the same thing. You start to fatigue swimming and that arm doesn't extend all the way and it starts to cross over more, right? It's the same fundamental breakdown, just appearing in slightly different ways in different positions. So we want to think about the key here is to think about like, look, there's only so many ways the body breaks down. Guess what? When we're all panicked, we all start breathing panicky in our chest and our shoulders, right? There's universal stress. When we lose hip position, everyone's knee collapses in. It doesn't matter what the sport is. So it's on us for our individual sport, and this is where the specificity comes, is just to understand and marry these general principles of where I start to break down and fall apart, and how does it look like, and what does it feel like when I'm doing my thing. So back to those push-ups in that ladder. If you're able to screw those hands in the ground, I use that cue to externally rotate and stabilize the shoulders, kind of like keeping your shoulder blades squeezed together when you move. My elbows are going to track inwards more towards my rib cage and stay nice and close. When I start to fatigue, I lose that shoulder stability. My elbows start to wing out. And that's where you see some people do push-ups and their elbows starting to fly out to the side. That is the swimmer who starts to cross over. That is the runner who starts to get hunched over and run with this east-west inefficient arm swing. It's the same movement fault.
Mind's blown.
I mean, get your fucking notepads out here, folks. There's a lot of goodness, but Nate, we've taken a lot of your time.
We should really have had the cameras on, huh?
We should have, yeah.
We should have. So Nate, before we go, I really want to touch on the Together We Move campaign that that the Run Experience is doing in collab with Fleet Feet. You want to just mention a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have partnered up with Fleet Feet Sports, which is a national chain of independent running stores, and to deliver daily at-home training to work on these very things we've talked about, improving your running and running mechanics, challenging your speed, to dropping like really cool mindful audio runs and like little mini like podcast interviews with cool people like Dean Karnassus, to doing strength and mobility and at-home workouts that will just give you something to do while you're home. And I honestly think that for those of us who are fortunately healthy, especially we're able to still work and our families are okay, athletically, we can come out of this probably in a better place than when we went in, if we kind of use this time to focus on these things. But we just want to give athletes those resources. So every day there's a new workout hosted in the Run Experience app. And a lot of the workouts are from us and from Fleet Feet, but we also have a lot of guest contributors too. So for example, we have Des Linden, who's contributing something, and we actually be doing a YouTube live show with her tomorrow on when we film this on Friday. we will have other big runners out there, as well as just like, not necessarily runners, but just the strength and movement space.
And Nate, and you can find that. Obviously, you can go to therunexperience.com for more information. We'll listen to the show notes, but you can also just download the app, and this content is free. Is that correct?
Yep, it's a free program in the app. All you need to do is download it. You can find that from our website, therunexperience.com. You can find it off our YouTube channels. It's in our Instagram bio that you can go there at The Run Experience. And, we have a series of free workouts and programs to access our entire library of workouts and programs to get direct coaching from us. We do have a premium membership. You could sign up for a year for $119. It's like $10 a month. Or you could do a monthly membership as well and, train for whatever. Take it to the next level.
I literally just downloaded the app. I searched the Run Experience on my iPhone, and I'm downloading it now. So I think for free, what Nate's telling us is for no additional cost. You don't need any equipment. You can become a better swim runner.
Better anything.
Better person. Better lumberjack, whatever you are. Just by doing these movements that are
that's right.
Functional.
Yeah. Well, Nate.
And for those of you who say, hey, I don't have time to mobilize, or I don't own a foam roller, I'm pretty sure you all have a wine bottle or coffee mug out there, and those will do just fine.
That's true.
That's good to know.
That's true. So, Nate.
I've been just drinking the wine all along. Here I am, some big idiot, just drinking the wine bottle.
The bottle could be empty.
Oh, okay. There you go.
It that way.
Yeah.
So, Nate, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show. It's kind of funny for me because we're really good friends. So, it's I was trying to find a way to get you on the show, so might as well have it be like official. You know what I mean?
I like it. It's fun to be on here. You guys are great.
Yeah. So with that, you can find Nate at therunexperience.com. The YouTube channel is like the #1 running YouTube channel in the world on YouTube. Check out the app. And with that, Nate, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Low Tide Boyz, a Swimrun podcast. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review on iTunes if you're so inclined.
You can also sign up for a newsletter at lowtideboyz.com. That's boys with a Z. And check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boyz on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, drop us an email at lowtideboyz@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Writing Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swimrun activities, hobbies, and other bullshit we do.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
And then a run.
And then another swim.
Then another run.
And then another swim.
And then run to the finish line. And just keep going until you're done.
Yes, or
until
run
you
to
cross the finish line.
Or run to the car.
Or run to your car.
Somewhere. Just keep running.
Peace.